Lucky Lindy flies all alone, and he's coming home today. Yes, he's a-comin', he's a-comin'.
On May 21st, 1927, the Spirit of St. Louis landed in Paris, completing the first solo flight across the Atlantic. The parked plane was an icon, but the man who climbed outside of it was a legend.
Lindy's coming home.
Charles Augustus Lindbergh was born on February 4th, 1902 in Detroit, Michigan. Lindbergh grew up with a love of nature while moving across the United States due to his father's spot in the House of Representatives. Lindbergh grew up with a love and passion for reading, which influenced his dream of adventure, science, and aviation. In 1920, Lindbergh attended a mechanical engineering program but quickly got tired of it and switched to study flight in Lincoln, Nebraska. On April 9, 1922, Lindbergh flew solo for the first time. He felt as if he could only live in the moment. After flight school, Lindbergh became a barnstormer, also known as a stunt flyer. In 1924, Lindbergh enrolled in the Army Flying School after a friend shared the benefits of it. With Lindbergh's background knowledge on planes, he succeeded very well, finishing first in his class of March 14, 1925.
In May 1919, Raymond Ortigue, a famous businessman, announced the Ortigue Prize. The Ortigue Prize was an offer of $25,000 to the first aviator who could fly from New York to Paris, or vice versa. This offer had not been reached yet until Charles Lindbergh entered the picture. Lindbergh came up with a plan to accept the challenge. He knew that no ordinary plane could make this long trip. Therefore, he needed to make some adjustments. A St. Louis businessman agreed to work with him to create the plane. The plane would be called the Spirit of St. Louis. This plane had a J5 engine and no radio, while the gasoline tank was in the front of the plane, blocking the pilot's view. Lindbergh had to look through a periscope in order to see outside of the plane. The iconic plane was built to the specific modifications of Lindbergh in order to make the flight across the Atlantic. More than 90 other aviators attempted to win the prize, but Lindbergh's historical flight would change that. Some people said Charles Lindbergh will never make it, but Lindbergh always found a way to prove people wrong.
On May 20, 1927, at 7:51 a.m., the Spirit of St. Louis took off the muddy roadway at the Roosevelt Field. 27 hours had passed, and the Spirit of St. Louis was 3 miles off the route to land at Lindbergh Airfield. Lindbergh was exhausted from the long journey, and he couldn't find the correct place to land. Lindbergh did not know that over 150,000 people came to witness the Spirit of St. Louis to land after the first solo flight across the Atlantic. The collective light from all the fans showed Lindbergh the path. The Spirit of St. Louis successfully landed after 33.5 hours of flying. The city of Paris was filled with excitement, so much excitement they carried Lindbergh on their shoulders. The crowd was so large, Lindbergh had to escape. This historical flight changed the history of aerospace aviation. Charles Lindbergh showed his persistence and motivation to make an impact on the world through this event.
After the historical flight Lindbergh had accomplished, the Goodwill Tour had started. This promoted aerospace education across America. In 1927, Lindbergh met Anne Morrow at a Christmas dinner. Little did Lindbergh know he had met his future wife. Their relationship was based around flying. For their first date, Lindbergh flew Morrow high above the ground. Soon, Charles Lindbergh and Anne Morrow were engaged and kept it a secret from the press. They got married in Morrow's backyard on May 27, 1929. Anne loved the excitement of flying, which led Lindbergh to teach her how to fly. Lindbergh believed that flight had the power of connecting the world. In order to share this idea, Lindbergh flew Morrow across the globe to promote the idea of commercial aviation. Along with that, they flew to find the best routes for commercial flying. Lindbergh partnered with the Pennsylvania Railroad to create the Lindbergh Line. The Lindbergh Line was a route for commercial aviation. Around this time, Lindbergh became a technical advisor for the Pan American Airlines. The start of commercial aviation was going strong.
During 1930, Lindbergh's sister-in-law Elizabeth Morrow had severe heart damage. Lindbergh always had an interest in biology, which excelled when he began to work with Dr. Alexis Carrel to create a solution to the problem. Elizabeth could not have surgery because it could cause permanent damage to her heart. In 1935, Lindbergh and Carrel created the Lindbergh pump, which could properly cultivate a whole organ for up to 2 or 3 hours without permanent damage. This was a medical breakthrough which impacted the medical field in a tremendous way.
On June 22, 1930, Charles Augustus Lindbergh Jr. was born. The press and media played a huge role in the life of the baby boy, nicknamed Charlie. The media requested many photos which publicized the presence of their son. 2 years later, a famous case had tragically struck. 2-year-old Charlie had been kidnapped with only a few clues left behind. This had led to a huge case. Lindbergh was desperate to find answers to help find his son. He was so desperate he paid $50,000 in ransom for answers, when turns out it was all a scam. 10 weeks later, Charlie's body had been found buried in the woods of Hopewell, New Jersey. Lindbergh blamed the media for the situation because, after all, if it wasn't for Charlie being publicized, this may have not happened. With little evidence, the case died down. However, some evidence matched up with Bruno Richard Hauptmann was put on trial. He was the same man who Lindbergh had desperately paid $50,000 to him for answers. Hauptmann was found guilty and charged, which resulted in his execution in 1936. Afterwards, the Federal Kidnapping Act was put into place. This tragedy affected how much the press and media shared and made kidnapping a federal crime.
Around the 1930s was when Lindbergh became involved with World War II. He played a great role in the war where he tried to persuade America not to be a part of it. We can only speculate that one of the reasons why he may have done that was because the war was slowing down the process of commercial aviation. Lindbergh tried to help fight the war later on. However, America was quick to refuse his help due to the speeches he had earlier made. But no doubt about it, Lindbergh still found a way to help support his country throughout the war. He helped manufacture B-24 Liberators, one of America's toughest bomber planes at the time. Along with that, he worked with Mayo Clinic to help fix the effect of high altitude gravitational force on aviators. Lindbergh decided that he needed to get to the front of the line. He flew over 50 combat missions as a civilian, while teaching young aviators useful aviation skills and techniques. Lindbergh had a great impact on the war, which helped America.
Charles Lindbergh made a large impact on history in many different ways, including the first solo flight across the Atlantic, commercial aviation, medical breakthroughs, aircraft technology, combat missions, and so much more. This man broke a barrier in history which impacted the future of aerospace technology and aviation. Charles Lindbergh was a man who forever changed history.